We are back with part two of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life Version, TLV. And this week we are covering Ezekiel chapters 17 to 32. And we're going to begin now with chapter 20, Rebellion and Return. On the 10th day of the 5th month of the 7th year, some of the elders of Israel came to seek Adonai. They sat before me. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel. Say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, have you come to inquire of me? As I live, it is a declaration of Adonai, I will not be inquired of by you. Will you judge them, son of man? Will you judge them? Make them know the detestable practices of their fathers. Say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, on the day I chose Israel, I lifted up my hand to the seed of the house of Jacob and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt. I lifted up my hand to them, saying, I am Adonai your God. On that day I lifted up my hand to them to bring them out of the land of Egypt into a land that I had sought out for them, flowing with milk and honey, the splendor of all lands. I said to them, Each of you must throw away every detestable thing from his eyes, and not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am Adonai your God. But they rebelled against me, and were unwilling to listen to me. None of them cast away the detestable things that were before their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. So I resolved to pour out my fury upon them, to expend my anger upon them in the midst of the land of Egypt. But I acted for the sake of my name, to keep it from being profaned in the eyes of the nations, where they were, in whose sight I made myself known to them, to bring them out from the land of Egypt. So I led them out from the land of Egypt, and brought them into the wilderness. I gave them my laws, and taught them my judgments, which if a man does, he will live by them. I also gave them my Shabbatot as a sign between me and them, so that they would know that I am Adonai who made them holy. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes. They rejected my judgments, which if a man does, he will live by them. They greatly profaned my Shabbatot. Then I resolved to pour out my fury on them in the wilderness, to consume them. But for the sake of my name, I did what would keep it from being profaned in the eyes of the nations, in whose sight I had brought them out. Yet I also lifted my hand to them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the splendor of all lands. For they rejected my laws, did not walk in my rulings, and profaned my Shabbatot, for their heart went after their idols. Nevertheless, my eye spared them from destruction, so I did not make a full end of them in the wilderness. I said to their children in the wilderness, Do not walk in the statutes of your fathers. Do not keep their ordinances. Do not defile yourselves with their idols. I am Adonai your God. Walk in my statutes. Keep my ordinances and do them. Keep my Shabbatot holy. So they will be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Adonai your God. But the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my statutes. They did not keep my ordinances to do them, which if a man does, he will live by them. They profaned my Shabbatot. Then I resolved to pour out my fury on them, to expend my anger on them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withheld my hand. For the sake of my name, I did what would keep it from being profaned to the eyes of the nations, in whose sight I had brought them out. I also lifted up my hand to them in the wilderness, to scatter them among the nations and disperse them through the countries. For they had not obeyed my ordinances, but had rejected my statutes, and profaned my Shabbatot. Their eyes went after their fathers' idols. I also gave them statutes that were not good, or ordinances by which they could not live. I let them become polluted in their own gifts, when they offered up all that opened the womb to pass through the fire, so that I might make them desolate, so that they would know that I am Adonai. Therefore, Son of Man, speak to the house of Israel, and say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Again your fathers have blasphemed me, in that they dealt faithlessly with me. When I brought them into the land which I lifted up my hand to give to them, they saw every high hill and every leafy tree. There they slaughtered their sacrifices and presented their offensive offering. There they made their soothing aroma and poured out their drink offering. So I asked them, what is the high place where you are going? So the name of it is called Barna to this day. Sorry, Bama, Bamah, to this day. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says Adonai Elohim, will you pollute yourselves after the manner of your fathers, and go after their abominations? When offering your gifts, making your sons pass through the fire, you keep polluting yourselves with all your idols up to this day. So should I be inquired of by you, house of Israel? As I live, it is a declaration of Adonai, I will not be inquired of by you. What comes up in your mind will not happen at all when you say, let us be like the nations, like the families of the countries, worshipping wood and stone. As I live, it is a declaration of Adonai, surely with a mighty hand, and with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out, I will be king over you. I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm, with fury poured out. I will bring you into the wilderness of these peoples. I will judge you there face to face, just as I judged your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will judge you. It is a declaration of Adonai. I will make you pass under the rod and bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge out the rebels from among you, and those who transgress against me, I will bring them out from the land where they dwell, but they will not enter the land of Israel. So you will know that I am Adonai. As for you, house of Israel, thus says Adonai Elohim, go on serving your idols, all of you, yet afterward you will surely listen to me. My holy name you will no longer profane with your gifts and your idols. For in my holy mountain, Israel's high mountain, it is a declaration of Adonai. There the whole house of Israel, all of them will serve me in the land. There I will take pleasure in them. There I will receive your offerings, the first of your gifts with all your holy things. With your sweet aroma I will accept you when I bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the countries where you have been scattered. I will be sanctified in you, in the sight of the nations. You will know that I am Adonai when I bring you into the land of Israel, into the country where I lifted up my hand to give it to your fathers. There you will remember your ways and all your deeds by which you defiled yourselves. You will loathe yourselves for all your evil that you have done. Then you will know that I am Adonai when I deal with you for my name's sake, and not according to your evil ways and your corrupt deeds, house of Israel. It is a declaration of Adonai. And that is the end of chapter 20. We're going to go into chapter 21. There's three sections in chapter 21. The first is the parable of the sword. The second is a sword sharpened. And the third is the sword of God's judgment. So we're going to begin with the parable of the sword. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Teman, that's Teman, and proclaim to the south, prophesy against the brushland of the Negev. Say to the brushland of the south, hear the word of Adonai. Thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, I will kindle a fire in you. It will devour every moist tree in you and every dry tree. Its leaping flame will not be extinguished. All faces from the south to the north will be scorched by it. All flesh will see that I, Adonai, have kindled it. It will not be extinguished. Then I said, Ah, Adonai, they say of me, isn't he just speaking in parables? Then the word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Jerusalem and proclaim to the sanctuaries and prophesy against the land of Israel. Say to the land of Israel, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Behold, I am against you. I will draw my sword from its sheath. I will cut off the righteous and the wicked from you, since I will cut off from you both the righteous and the wicked. Therefore my sword will come out of its sheath against all flesh, from the south to the north. All flesh will know that I, Adonai, have drawn my sword from its sheath. It will not return any more. As for you, son of man, groan with breaking of your sides, and with bitterness you will groan before their eyes. Now, when they ask you, why are you groaning? You will say, because of the news that is coming. Every heart will melt, every hand will be limp, every spirit will be faint, and all knees will turn to water. Behold, it is coming, and it will happen. It is a declaration of Adonai. A sword sharpened. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus says Adonai, and say, a sword, sharpened and also polished. Sharpened to slaughter ruthlessly, polished so it will flash like lightning. Or should we rejoice? It the rod? It is the rod, my son despising every tree. It is given to be polished, to be seized. The sword is sharpened, polished, to be put into the hand of the slayer. Cry and wail, son of man, for it is against my people, it is against all the leaders of Israel. They are thrown over to the sword along with my people. Therefore strike your thigh, for it is a testing. What if they scorn even the rod? It must not be. It is a declaration of Adonai. You son of man, prophesy. Strike your hands together. The sword will strike twice, even 3 times. A sword for the slain, a sword for a great slaughter. It surrounds them, so that their hearts will melt, and many will stumble and fall. I have set the point of the sword against all their gates. Alas, it is made for lightning, it is polished for slaughter. Slash to the right, turn to the left, wherever your blade is meeting. I also will clap my hands together, so I will satisfy my wrath. I, Adonai, have spoken. And the last part is the sword of God's judgment. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Now you, son of man, mark 2 ways for the sword of the king of Babylon to come. Both of them should originate from the same land. Mark a signpost, cut it out at the start of the road to the city. You are to mark out a way so the sword can come to Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and to Judah in fortified Jerusalem. For the king of Babylon stands at the fork in the road, at the start of the 2 roads, to seek divination. He shakes the arrows, consults the idols. He looks in the liver. In his right hand is the lot for Jerusalem, to set up battering rams, to open the mouth for slaughter, to lift up the voice with a war cry, to set up battering rams against the gates, to cast up ramps, to build a siege wall. It will seem to them like a false divination. They have sworn solemn oaths, but he will remember their iniquity, so they may be seized. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, because you have caused your iniquity to be remembered by exposing your transgressions, so that your sins appear in all your deeds, because you have come to remembrance, you will be seized with the hand. So you, wicked one, Prince of Israel, the day has come to be slain, the time of final punishment. Thus says Adonai Elohim, remove the turban, take off the crown. This will no longer be the same. What is low will be exalted, what is high will be abased. Ruin, ruin, I will make it a ruin. Even this will not be, until he comes to whom belongs the judgment, and I will give it to him. Now you, son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus says Adonai Elohim, concerning the children of Ammon, and concerning their taunts, say, a sword drawn for slaughter, polished to consume, to flash like lightning, while they see false visions for you, while they divine lies for you, to lay you out on the necks of the wicked. You are to be slain, whose day has come, and the time of the final punishment return to its sheath. In the place where you were created, in the land of your origin, I will judge you. I will pour out my indignation on you. I will blow on you with the fire of my fury. I will hand you over to brutal men, skilled to destroy. You will be fuel for the fire. Your blood will be throughout the land. You will not be remembered, for I, Adonai, have spoken. That's the end of chapter 21. And as you can see, there's symbols and messages of judgment in these chapters. And this is what the Lord had Ezekiel prophesy to the people. And just as a reminder, the central message of Ezekiel is destruction of Jerusalem and its resurrection. And also in Ezekiel, it is stated many times, um, they shall know that I am Adonai, I am the Lord. I believe it is it is said 70 times in the book of Ezekiel. So we're going to go next into chapter 22, Blood and Justice. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, You, son of man, will you judge? Will you judge the blood city? So explain to her all her abominations. Say, Thus says Adonai Elohim, city that spills blood in her midst and makes idols for herself that defile, her time has come. You have become guilty in your blood that you have spilled, and are defiled by your idols that you have made. So you have brought your days near, and have come up to your years. Therefore I have made you a disgrace to the nations, and a mockery to all the lands. Those near and far from you will mock you with a defiled name and full of turmoil. Behold, each prince of Israel has used his own arm's strength in you to shed blood. Father and mother have been treated with contempt. The outsider has been oppressed in your midst. The orphan and the widow have been mistreated in you. You have despised my holy things and profaned my Shabbatot. Slanderous men are in you in order to shed blood. They have eaten at the mountain shrines. They commit immoral acts in your midst. They have uncovered their father's nakedness in you. They violate women that are in Nida within you. One has been detestable with his neighbor's wife, another has wickedly defiled his daughter-in-law, yet another has violated his sister, his father's daughter, in you. They accept bribes in order to shed blood in you. You have taken usurious interest. You have greatly gained by oppressing your neighbors, and you have forgotten me. It is a declaration of Adonai. Now look, I clap my hands at your dishonest gain that you have made, and at your bloodshed in your midst. Will your heart, will your heart's courage stand, or your hands be strong to the days when I deal with you? I, Adonai, have spoken it, and will do it. I will scatter you among the nations and disperse you throughout the lands. I will purge your uncleanness from you. You will be defiled in the sight of the nations. Then you will know that I am Adonai. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, the house of Israel has become dross, and dross means rubbish, to me. All of them are the copper, tin, iron, and lead left inside a furnace. They are the dross of silver. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, because you have all become dross, therefore, behold, I will gather you into Jerusalem, as one gathers silver, copper, iron, lead, and tin into the furnace, to blow the fire upon it, to melt it. So I will gather you in my anger and in my fury. I will put you in and melt you. I will gather you and blow the fire of my wrath upon you, so you may be melted in the midst of it. As silver is melted in the furnace, so you will be melted within it. So you will know that I, Adonai, have poured out my fury on you. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, say to her, You are a land that is not cleansed or rained upon in the day of indignation. There is a conspiracy of her prophets in her midst, like a roaring lion tearing prey. They have devoured lives, they have taken wealth and valuables, they multiply widows in her midst. Her Kohanim have done violence to my Torah, and have profaned my holy things. They have made no distinction between the holy and the profane, nor have they taught the difference between the unclean and the clean. They shut their eyes to my Shabbatot, so I am profaned among them. Her princes in her midst are like wolves tearing at prey, spilling blood and destroying lives for dishonest gain. Her prophets have plastered them with whitewash, seeing false visions and predicting lies to them, saying, Thus says Adonai Elohim, when Adonai has not spoken. We can look at that today. We can see a lot of that is happening today with false prophets, with the wickedness of the world, um, the spilling of innocent blood. There's just so much that we could relate to this in our day to day. No one in the breach. The people of the land have oppressively blackmailed, plundered and robbery, wronged the poor and needy, and abused the outsider unjustly. And yes, that is going on today, which needs to be repented of and turned to God. I searched for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand in the breach before me for the land so that I would not destroy it, but I found no one. So there was no one willing to stand in the gap. When we talk about standing in the gap and praying for the nations, um, there was no one willing to do it. Therefore I have poured out my fury on them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. I have brought their own way upon their heads. It is a declaration of Adonai. Then we have chapter 23, Jerusalem Jerusalem and Samaria take lovers. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. They were harlots in Egypt. They were harlots in their youth. Their bosoms were caressed there, and their virgin breasts were fondled. Their names were Oholah, the older one, and Oholibah, her sister. They became mine, and they gave birth to sons and daughters. As for their names, Obalah is Samaria, and Ohilibah is Jerusalem. Ohilah prostituted herself, though she was mine. She lusted after her lovers, the Assyrians, warriors dressed in blue, governors and rulers, all of them handsome young men, horsemen riding on horses. She prostituted herself with them. All of the choice men of Assyria, she defiled herself with all of the idols of everyone she lusted after. She did not give up her harlotry in Egypt, for in her youth they had lain with her. They fondled her virgin breast and poured out their lust on her. Therefore I gave her into the land of her lovers, into the hand of the Assyrians, whom she lusted after. They stripped her naked, then took her sons and her daughters, and slaughtered her with a sword. She became notorious among women. Judgments were executed upon her. Now he is talking here about the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, because they are the ones that went into, um, and of course, Samaria was was in the northern kingdom, and they're the ones that went into captivity into Assyria. And I'm looking at the time, and I think I'm going to pause here, come back with part 3, and we're going to do the next part of this chapter.